Hi, this is Janet Swanson, and you are listening to One Voice Makes a Difference podcast. Today, I just want to encourage you, inspire you, and give you a reason to keep going. As you're listening to this podcast, I pray that the Holy Spirit will open up your ears to hear Him, open up your eyes to see Him, and open up your heart to know Him. I pray that 2021 will find you flowing in the year of God's favor over your life. I pray that healing will come to your heart speedily, and I pray that this podcast will be a blessing to you. Welcome to One Voice Makes a Difference podcast. Hello, everybody. This is One Voice Makes a Difference podcast. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us again. And we are here with Dee Boyd, part 2 of her story, a powerful story. Listen, if you guys have not heard part 1, you need to go back and listen to last week's. I think it was episode 52. This is episode 53. So you need to go back and listen to that episode and listen to all the things that happened to her. And today we're going to talk about the journey of healing and how she got to the place of healing, especially to the point where you could actually share your story again. But before we get to that place, Dee, and again, welcome to One Voice. Thanks for being here. And your testimony and your story is helping so many people everywhere you go. You are talking about it and telling people how good God is. And even when life is not good, God is still good. Yes. And God still has a plan. Yes. And He knows how to take what the enemy meant for harm and He turns around for our good. I sent you an email a little while ago, and I saw in your email Ecclesiastes 3, God makes everything beautiful in its own time. Yes. And that just really stood out to me because God has a perfect timing for your healing. And He will take the ashes of your life and make something beautiful out of it. Yes. So all the trauma you went through, the rape, the sexual abuse, all the trauma of this abuse. Now we're going to talk about where it led you. Mm-hmm. And because then you went to another level of living a promiscuous lifestyle. Yes. So let's talk about that a little bit because there's a lot of people out there living this kind of lifestyle. Why don't you tell us what that word even means? Because we were talking about the definition of it earlier before we started the podcast. So I'm like, what does that even mean?
Exactly.
Because nobody wants to say, oh, I'm promiscuous.
Exactly.
Nobody wants to admit it, right?
Exactly. It's such a horrible word. Yeah. It really is. So I looked the definition up again during our break, and I was pleasantly surprised by the definitions that I came across this time around. Mm-hmm. And one of them was having casual sexual relations, which to me is a softer way of using that term, because that's exactly what my lifestyle was. Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't go seeking these encounters. Just if I came across someone, someone entered my life, and I had continually struggled, ED, with boundaries. So if I was approached in that way, I gave in, basically. Another definition was indiscriminate in the choice of sexual partners. That was me as well, because as I mentioned to you, it's only by the grace of God that I wasn't approached by just hideous men. Yeah. Even though the motives of the majority of the people weren't pure. Right. It could have been so much worse. Yeah. So I didn't have a filter at that time. Well,
when you think about it, when you think about all the mass murderers that are out there and the things that are happening, even the one guy that was on the bicycle, that he could have been anybody.
Yes.
But he wasn't.
Yes.
And I think God protected you even from that.
Exactly.
And, you know, and there are people out there like that.
Oh, yes.
And you had a stalker
Yes.
that lasted for, you said, 10 years.
Yes.
And so we're going to talk a little bit about that too. But meanwhile, I think because the door had been open at a very young age, you were introduced to sexuality and things that you should never been introduced to at such a young age.
Correct.
At what, 12, 11 years old?
Yep.
And then in ninth grade, you were raped and raped again in the 11th grade and the 12th grade. It just things just kept snowballing in your life, and there were no boundaries, living life with no boundaries.
Correct.
And just doing whatever and saying yes. And I think deep down inside, you probably were just thinking, well, you know, my no's not important because I said no before.
Right.
And nobody listened, so why not? Let's just go on out.
Exactly.
Let's just do whatever.
Right.
So eventually, though, you got married, though,
Yes,
right?
I did.
So tell us a little bit about that, and tell us about your abortion. What happened, and before the abortion, and afterwards, and then the marriage and all of that. Just I don't know the timeline of all that, but just go
Sure.
ahead and open your heart and talk to us about that a little bit.
Absolutely. During the break, I was actually kind of looking at my own timeline, so to speak. So from the moment that I'm just going to call him the stalker.
Okay. Okay.
He entered my life right after high school. So that was in 88. In 95 is when I gave my life to Christ. But during that time from 88 to 95, that's when I was leading, you know, that promiscuous lifestyle. So I give my life to Christ in 95. And even though I was moved in that moment, my life didn't change at that moment. You know,
Yeah.
I didn't have that relationship with him. So that was actually after I had my first abortion, because I gave my life to Christ in December of 95, but I had my first abortion earlier that year. And then I'm going to stop there for a second because I had I experienced sexual trauma again before I gave my life to Christ. So I had my abortion in 95, and as a part of, let's just say they recommend that you do a post-abortion exam. And because of my own guilt and shame, I didn't want to go to my own gynecologist who was a female at the time. I chose to go to allow their doctor to examine me. And when I did, I experienced assault on the table, like sexual assault on the table.
What?
And what I remember...
Was anybody in the room with you?
No, it was just me and him.
See, that's a no-no.
It was just me and him. And I can remember like this, and it's not the first time that I've seen it, like this, I got you kind of sarcastic look on his face, you know, like there was nothing professional about it, even though I didn't know it at the time. I just remember the smirk on his face, you know, and at the time, I don't remember if it was like 311, 401. I can't remember what the number was, but I remember passing on the road and I saw this billboard that says like, call a nurse. And this was the number. So I called that nurse and I asked, the best way that I don't want to go into details, but I asked if what I experienced was a part of a post-abortion exam. And the nurse said, absolutely not. That is not a part of it. And I just kind of let that sit. I didn't do anything with it. I didn't report him again, you know, but I knew that was not.
Well, number one, anytime all we women, we have been to the gynecologist before.
Yes.
Never, not one time has the doctor ever examined me without a nurse being in there. So, you know, but maybe there's a lot of people that don't know that. They don't know that there should be a nurse in the room with them. And you know when someone has crossed the line.
Exactly.
You know when
Yes.
it's not, and you've had an examination before, so you know when it's not.
Like there was no warning, no
Yeah.
nothing. You know, I'm glad that his hands were gloved.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I knew it because I kind of zoned out, of course, because it's an exam.
Yeah.
But as soon as he was done, I literally I was on full alert. And that's why I said I can remember his expression on his face when that happened. And you're right. Even with my female gynecologist, there's somebody else in the room.
Yes.
But again, being totally naive didn't even dawn on me to even ask, like, where's your assistant? Like, we're not going to move any further until this. I didn't even, because I didn't want to be there in the beginning. I was just trying to do the right thing to take care of my physical body, which in and of itself is probably a miracle, because I'm allowing men to treat me any kind of way. So to think that I had enough in me to want to make sure that I was taking care of myself after having this abortion. When I think about it now, like, that's a miracle in and of itself.
It really is. It really is. So tell us a little bit about before the abortion. So when you found out you were pregnant, did you automatically, that was your first response to go get an abortion?
My first response was, I'm not, I can't do this. Like, I can tell you the story, a brief portion of the father of the child. So I had met this gentleman. I use that term lightly, but he approached me because he made a monetary bet with a coworker. We all worked together. So he made a monetary bet with a coworker that he would be the first of the two of them to have sex with me.
Wow.
That was his intention.
Yeah.
From the beginning.
Wow.
So after I got pregnant, he paid for the procedure. We go back to his apartment afterwards, and I'm tired, so I'm like sleeping on the couch. I guess I just crashed. I woke up. He's on the phone with another young lady, and
wow.
I needed to call my dad because I was gone like all day, so I needed to call home. And I just, I picked up the phone when he was done, talked to my dad, and he's like shouting profanity like in the background. And I'm like thinking like, dude, I'm on the phone with my dad,
Wow.
So I clearly remember that. And then I think maybe the next day or shortly thereafter, again, we work in the same place, and we used to take our breaks together. This particular day, I call to see if he's ready to take his break. And he tells me at work, when I'm getting ready to go on a break, that he made a bet to see who would be the first person to have. He tells me this over the phone.
Wow.
At work when I'm about to take my break.
Wow.
And the only thing that I remember saying is, "You have a good life." Like,
wow.
And I hung up the phone. And the person that he made the bet with, maybe a couple days later, I was working overnight, and I passed this person when I was going into work, and that person was coming out, and he couldn't look me in my face, and I knew at that moment that the guy, he was telling me the truth at that moment. So this is my mindset going into it. So not only am I thinking I am not ready to be a mom, although technically I already was a mother, but I'm thinking I can't do this. And then I'm looking at him, just like, I don't want that to be the father of my child. Again, he was already the father of my child.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but I'm just like, I absolutely cannot, I can't do this.
Wow.
Yeah. And at some point I remember I don't really remember when the thought of having an abortion came to me, you know. I do remember going to the clinic, and the supposed counseling that they give you really isn't that. They don't counsel you, you know. I actually had a conversation with my sister probably maybe a year ago, and she said that I did have a conversation with her, and she offered to, you know, to help and be a support to me. I don't remember that.
Really?
I really don't remember that because
Wow.
I think I even said to her, I'm like, if anyone, you would like to think if someone had approached you and really kind of pleaded with you that you would not go through with it. But I guess in my mind, I was determined to do this. You know what I mean? And I'll never forget the experience. And I mean, and I
So how did you feel afterwards, and especially with him telling you, like, you're dealing with the trauma of the abortion within itself, and then the emotions of, hey, I was just a bet,
exactly.
and your bet was this, and this is what I went through for your bet.
Yes.
I mean, that's pretty dark, you know?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So how did you emotionally deal with that? Did you get counseling afterwards, or again?
Absolutely not.
So you just go on living your promiscuous lifestyle.
That's it.
Okay.
Exactly. That's it exactly.
So you eventually, though, you get married, though, right?
I do. So this was 95, and then I start talking to another gentleman and get pregnant and have my second abortion in 96. So this was probably one of the few times where relationships crossed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so my ex-husband entered my life around that same time, like after, well, yeah, literally almost around that exact same time.
After your abortion?
Because we were dating when I realized that I was pregnant.
I see.
And I knew that it wasn't his. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he didn't want me to have the abortion. But again, you're so selfish, you know, that I can't have another man's child and be married to this person. Because really quickly after we were, you know, dating, we started talking about marriage. So he actually took me to get my second abortion. Unlike my first, I didn't get sick on my first one. I got really sick on my second. And he pretty much had it set up where I'm just going to take care of you, you know, this day. I'm going to get you there. And he had gotten me a hotel room just to recoup for the night. But he was literally getting ready to walk out of my life. I was so sick. Like, I remember vomiting, like, on the way up to the room. Like, I was sick, fever, like the whole thing.
Before or after?
This is
after you had the abortion?
This is after I had the second abortion. So we're literally leaving the clinic and he's taking me to the hotel.
Wow.
And we get to the hotel and I'm done, and I'm just like, please don't leave me. Like, please don't leave. Just, can you stay with me?
Wow.
You know, for the night. And somewhere in my mind, that sealed it for me, that this must be the person I'm supposed to spend the rest of my life with, because you know my deepest, darkest secret, and you still love me, you still want me to be your wife, even after all of this, you know. So we get married. We get married in March of 97. So I think we dated for maybe 6 months. Like, it was very quick,
right?
You know. And I remember struggling with the abortion. Even, like, for me, everything changed for that second abortion. It just really did, because I never expected to be in that position twice.
Wow.
You know, so
and you never do.
Yeah.
It's like that saying that sin will take you further than you ever thought you would ever go. And what it does, it just, there's no end to it. It's like the bottomless pit. It keeps going on and on and on. So you start with one, and then it goes to the next, and somewhere we start that cycle again,
Yes.
that snowball effect where it just keeps
Exactly.
getting bigger and bigger and bigger in our life. And that's where, we talk a lot about getting saved in church and accepting Jesus, but this is where we need deliverance, where we break the cycle.
Yes.
And we're like, no more is this going to happen in my life.
Yes.
But it still took a little more snowball effecting before you get there, right?
Oh, for sure.
So you're still in this cycle. You're going, you don't know how to say no. You're just saying yes to whoever and whatever. So how long did you stay married to this gentleman?
We were married for about 5 years. So what happened, you have to think at this point, I'm taking all of my sexual trauma with me.
Yeah.
And that lifestyle that I was leading, all that's coming in with me.
Yeah.
We did premarital counseling, but none of this was touched because I didn't. We talked about the abortion briefly, but that was really it, So in my naive mind, we get married, like planning all that stuff is wonderful. Roses, everything's lovely. But we come to the honeymoon. And I recall, and he knows this, I've shared this with him. He knows this, that it was on my way. We had gotten to the hotel and we were in the elevator heading up to our hotel suite. And it was in that moment that I realized that I made a mistake.
Wow.
Like, I'm like, what am I doing? And in my mind, I'm thinking now, because at this point, I absolutely hate sex. Like, I hate sex.
Yeah.
So I'm like, in my mind, the honeymoon was supposed to be all about this wild, crazy, sexual experience.
Right.
No one had told me anything different.
Right.
And so from that moment on, after feeling like I just made a mistake, then I just put on this mask and I became someone else. So pretty much that same person who just wouldn't say no, or would allow, sexual advances and things like that. I just kind of stepped into that role and just started pretending from that moment. And I lasted for about 6 months. Something shifted at about 6 months because then the triggers from my past started coming. Yeah. And sex just became so, I was repelled by it. Yeah. Like, I absolutely didn't want to have it, and we struggled from then on. And that's huge. Just sexual brokenness is a real thing. And when you aren't healed and you can't even express it, you don't even know where to begin. You just know that you don't like it. Like all of this reminds me of my past. And because it does, I am not interested. I even remember telling him, look, you can go have an affair. Like, as long as you don't touch me, I'm good. Wow. Because I understand that you need to, I'm totally good with that.
Wow.
I didn't want.
Did he ever take you up on that?
He didn't.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, thank God. So you stayed married for 5 years then, and you got a divorce, and you've already had 2 abortions. So at some point, though, you have this other encounter with God, and a journey starts.
Yes.
So what happens there? And you do get remarried again.
Exactly.
Okay, so did the encounter with God start before your second marriage or after?
It started as my first marriage was declining. Okay, so in March of 2001, well, actually it started before then. If you remember, I talked about the stalker, and him being in and out of my life.
Right.
He found me again while I was married. Wow. And we started this toxic affair, like just toxic. And the trauma that I experienced before I got married was worse when he re-entered my life while I was married. Wow. Like it was worse because again, the rape happened when I was 29. I was married at that time. So that was my cutoff at that point because I was in so much physical pain. I don't know how I made it back to our home. Like, I was absolutely done.
So the stalker raped you while you were married?
Yes.
To the first marriage?
Yes.
Wow.
Exactly. And it was just this whole big thing. Like, I just, again, being that rag doll, allowed him to do things that now it would never happen. So I'm going to say God. I got exposed. I got exposed by a friend of mine, went to my ex-husband and shared what was happening. And that night I'll never forget, because instead of him leaving me in my pit and walking out the door and never seeing me again, he got on. I was literally on the floor, because like, once he told me what happened, I just went numb. If you think those movie scenes where you see like a female crying and like she just drops to the ground, like she's just lifeless, that was me. I was done. I couldn't believe that I was in this place, and that I couldn't believe it. So he got on the floor with me, held me in his arms, and sang "Great is thy faithfulness" over me.
Wow.
I will never forget it. I'll never forget it. We've talked about it on multiple occasions, because in the moment it felt like he was singing over me. But in conversations that we've had afterwards, I realized it was a prayer for both of us. Not just for myself, but for him. You know? Just absolutely amazing. So the very next day, we went to our pastors and had a conversation with them. And shortly after that, we started Christian marriage counseling. And it was during that time when I started to deal with the abortion. So I guess it started by us kind of breaking down the different types of sexual trauma, from molestation, which is generally when you're younger, to abuse, which may not necessarily be rape, but it's harmful, like hurtful, harmful. And then there's rape, where it's just flat out. And so just kind of walking, it was intense, like reading, homework. It was an intense process. And then a part of that, I'll never forget this either. I was invited to a baby shower by someone that I attended church with from my youth. So I go, but when I get there, not only is she pregnant, there are about 5 other pregnant women in the room.
Wow.
And all I can say is just trigger. I was just as catatonic as I was after being, abused. I couldn't enjoy myself. Like, I was just the shell of a person. So we get back to counseling. I share this with our counselor, and he goes, "D, you don't get it?" And I'm like, "Get what?" He was like, "It's time." I'm like, "Time for what? I don't know what you're talking about." He was like, "D, it's time to deal with your abortions." And I'm just like,
and the counseling you get before your abortions, they don't tell you the after effects of it, do they?
Absolutely not.
No.
No way was that mentioned at all. It was not.
That's crazy.
It was not. So our counselor suggested that I attend he called it a post-abortion support group.
Okay.
But it was actually a post-abortion, a Bible study.
Wow. Called
Free Me to Live. And the author of it was Ken Freeman. An amazing study. And so the lady who led the Bible study has actually become my spiritual mom.
Wow.
She's been in my life since then. It was an amazing experience.
Wow.
And through that, she sponsored me to attend a Christian women's retreat. And it was during that retreat where I truly encountered the love of God.
Wow.
I cannot even begin to explain to you.
Was that the Tres Dias?
It was Tres Dias.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely amazing. Just unconditional love from people that I didn't even know.
Wow.
Just so loved on. Oh my gracious.
Do you think that's where you encountered the love of God?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. From just amazing men and women. Just selfless.
Yeah.
Just absolutely selfless and giving and caring and loving and
So yeah, that's amazing. So what happened after that?
So unfortunately, the combination of the counseling and Trace Diaz was the beginning of my healing journey, but it wasn't enough to keep the marriage together because I was such a wreck. Like, I didn't even love myself.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
There was no way that I could love him. So I chose to walk away. It wasn't his decision. It was mine. So I did, and started this journey of seeking God. Like when I left that retreat, like I became a seeker. Like I couldn't get enough of Jesus. So I just wanted to be where he was. So I started looking for churches. And I remember experiencing the Holy Spirit for the first time. The first time, like walking into this church and just crying, just tears just start flowing. And I don't even understand why, because this has never happened to me before.
So it's like in the middle of praise and worship, you just walk into the presence of God.
Exactly.
You know, I was telling someone this week as they were talking about how, and their heart was broken into a million pieces because of a relationship and the things that they had done. And they're like, well, in time I'll heal. I'm like, no, time doesn't heal. But the presence of God heals.
Yes.
Time spent with God is what heals.
Yes.
And one moment, and see, God is outside of time. And God is a healer. And when you walk into his presence, that's what you did. You walked into the very presence of God, and it's overwhelming, isn't it?
Yes.
Like when you walk into the love of God, it's like you walk into this wall and it hits you, and it's a force that is stronger than any other force you have ever experienced in your life. And then you're like, whoa. And once you've tasted that, nothing else can compare to it, because now you have tasted the presence of God. And it takes you to the ultimate high, and it soothes the pain in your heart.
Yes.
Doesn't it?
It does.
When you get into the presence of God, you don't even feel that pain. You feel the release of the pain. So you walked into the presence of God, and then I think this is when your journey of the relationship really began. Like, okay, there's more to this.
Absolutely.
There's worship.
Exactly. And it's like he was building me up to that, because I experienced some of that. I think Trace Diaz for me was more of a personal touch, because each weekend is centered around a theme and a scripture. The theme for that weekend was the Potter's Hand. The theme song for the weekend was The Potter's Hand by Darlene Check, and the scripture for that weekend was Romans 12:2. And one of the key moments for me was walking into a service, and there were broken pots across this stage. And it was a replica of how I felt on the inside at that moment. So even though I'm grasping, what's going on, I'm not fully getting it, if that makes sense, because again, this is at the start of him really drawing me in close, and it was just, for me, it was so personal, like you really know me, like you know that I feel that way. So it was like everything about that weekend, from the testimonies that were given, like with each person that spoke, they were touching a different part of my heart.
Wow, that's awesome.
I mean, it wasn't anything that didn't register with me. He used every single person to speak to my heart, and it was some part of my life that was exemplified in each one of these people. And so you add that to that moment with the broken pots, and that by the end of the weekend, we got to see a beautiful pot, you know?
Wow,
and it
that's
was just this, just literally God walking me through, like, this will be you. You know what I mean? And you couldn't tell me by the end of the weekend in a way that I wasn't this person,
right?
Because I left so much at the altar during that weekend. You know,
yeah,
I didn't realize, and then I'm glad that I didn't realize that there was more work to be done. But like, I truly felt like a new creation when I left that weekend. Like, I remember saying to someone that now when I smile, it's genuine. You know? Because I've always had this bubbly personality.
Right.
You know? But it was a facade in a lot. You know, the energy was real.
Right.
You know, but it just wasn't.
It wasn't reflecting the inner person.
Exactly.
And that's what you want, like, in every person. And there are so many people walking around because the inside is so broken that they just put on this facade, like you said.
Exactly.
But the word talks about how true beauty is reflected from inside all the way out.
Exactly.
And that's where a lot of people, they're like, no, I don't want you to see my brokenness. I don't want you to see what I've been through. But, you know, you talk about this sermon, this whole weekend of the broken pots and the songs and the message and the, you know, how it all came together. Sometimes as ministers, I don't think we get that people are out there actually listening.
Yes.
Because you see so many people, like, they come to you the next week, and I'm like, well, did you hear my sermon last week?
Right.
Did you listen to what it said? Because now you're doing this, and I've already preached it, but you're coming back with this. So a lot of times we think, oh, well, they're not getting it. They're not listening. But you were getting it.
Yes.
And that encourages me to want to keep preaching and to keep speaking to people and speaking life into them, because there are people out there that are hungry, but they're broken.
Yes.
And they want to be healed.
Yes.
They just don't know how to get there.
Exactly.
And they don't understand that healing is a process and it's a journey. A miracle is instant, but healing is painful.
Yes.
Because God digs up all the dirt.
Yes.
He shows you your brokenness.
Exactly.
He shows you your need for Him. He reveals the things that He wants to heal, the things that you've pressed down, pushed down, you closed the door to it, spider webs have grown in it. I mean, it's been there so long. Exactly. And God says, I want that part of your heart. Yes. I want that part that's broken.
Yes.
That part that hurts, that part that you have shut me off. I want to go deep down inside. So He'll be knocking on that door, and you're like, not ready for that yet.
Yes.
So you enter into a marriage. He's still knocking. No, God can't go there yet.
Exactly.
But then it just begins to surface, and God says, okay, God's so patient. Aren't you one?
He
Isn't that
is.
awesome? It's so wonderful that you're so patient with us, God. You're so loving. You're so kind. And the beautiful thing about this whole story, Dee, is from the moment you were born, God already saw the end of your life.
Exactly.
He already saw this moment right here where you would be stomping on the devil's head with your testimony.
Yes.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. He already saw the product. He already knew what He was going to do. And then being as sovereign and powerful as He was along the way, He had setups for you every time. A setup, planting seeds of faith inside of you, planting hope inside of you.
Yes.
And for you guys that are listening out there, you may think, well, so-and-so is too far gone, too far. No, I'm telling you, it doesn't matter where you make your bed.
Exactly.
God's hand is not too short that He cannot reach down exactly where you are and pull you up out of that pit. David said it like this: if I make my bed in the pits of hell, there you are, God.
Yes.
If I'm soaring on the highest of heights, there you are, God. Wherever I go, when I turn to the left, there you are. When I turn to the right, there you are. I'm telling you, God, I feel the presence of God right now. God is aware of everything that you're going through, and no matter where you're at, He is able to reach you. Amen?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That is amazing.
Yes.
So tell me, what happened after that? You had this encounter that weekend, and then?
So, after that after that weekend, like I said, I was just thirsty.
Yeah.
Like I just wanted to be, where he was. And that first church that would be the church that I encountered. The first church that I encountered where I felt the presence of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
I was there for maybe like about 6 months. And then I was led to a different church. And it was almost as if like God didn't miss a beat.
Right.
So like that same personal touch that I experienced at that retreat and during that, those moments of worship, I got that same tangible touch being a part of this ministry.
Wow.
In Savannah, Georgia. And like I shared with you, one of my earliest memories was during a time of worship when one of the worship leaders came down to me and said, "It looks like you need a hug. Can I give you a hug?" And I said yes. And I just cried. Like, I don't even know this person.
Wow.
She doesn't know me. Like, I'm bawling my eyes out.
Yeah.
We're sitting at the altar. And when I'm done, we're like the only two people sitting in the sanctuary. It's that kind of personal touch that I experienced over and over and over again. And once you go through a Tracy's weekend, you get an opportunity to serve on upcoming weekends. I did that for like 15 years straight. And I went with a heart to serve other women, but God used that to continue my healing and to draw me closer to him. So if you remember, he drew me to himself initially in 95 through worship.
Yeah.
And then it just happened organically.
Yeah.
Like I started saying thank you to him through worship. So I said yes to him when I was approached to start liturgical dancing, just like praise dancing. I just said yes. No kind of experience, nothing. I just wanted to give back to God. And I did that for 15 years.
Wow.
Just dance before the Lord.
Wow.
In services, retreats, I can't tell you. And it's something about like God has consistently used worship to speak to my heart.
Wow.
I jokingly would say, "You got an issue? I got a worship song for you."
Yeah.
Because that's literally what he did. Like
Right.
he loved me through worship.
Yeah.
He has healed me through worship and just the tangible, physical presence of men and women of God in my life. Like it's just absolutely amazing. So from that retreat in 2001 until 2016, I was just in this space of yielding myself to God and just seeking after him and showing my gratitude through worship. In 2016, I moved from Savannah, Georgia to Palm Coast, Florida. And in that transition, I reconnected with someone from high school. So you have to think at this point, that's about 15 years of being single.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wow. That was a long time.
Exactly. So we connected somewhere, I think maybe 2015 might have been the first time he contacted me through Facebook. So like he, contacted me when I moved to Palm Coast though, because he lived in Jacksonville. Things just kind of rapidly progressed at that point. We started dating.
Right.
We got married in April of 2017. And within the first year of our marriage, my triggers resurfaced. Can I just tell you?
Wow.
I wasn't surprised because it was something that I had mentioned in our premarital counseling sessions. Because I just didn't know if it would resurface or how. Like, I just didn't know, you know, and I didn't want to pull away from him. Like, you know, for the first time in my life, I'm ready to like give myself to someone in that way, you know? But when it started to resurface, I withdrew again. Like, I kind of started going back to my old patterns, you know. We tried, you know, like I initially.
So what were some of your triggers? Was it
being,
smells?
It wasn't smells. It was being touched.
Okay.
In a way that reminded me of abuse in the past.
Okay.
You know, like that was the initial trigger. And when it happened, the only thing I could think, you know, to do, I immediately reached out to my pastor, the person who, you know, has been in my life since March 2001. Like, he's been a constant, just like my spiritual mom. So I reached out to him, and he was like, Dee, you're going to have to forgive again, like all of those men. Like, you need to do that. And all I could do was cry. Like, I remember us sitting on the couch, you know, FaceTiming him, and I'm just bawling because I'm like,
wow,
I have been doing my work. Do you know what I mean? Like, I started this process in 99. You're telling me I've got to walk through all of that again? Like, I'm like, I can't do this. I'm talking to him, but I'm having this conversation with God at the same time.
Wow.
Like, I can't do this again. I don't have it in me to do this again. You know, little did I know what God had in store for me. So I'm like, I trust him though, you know? So I'm like,
wow.
Okay.
Wow. So God has so much in store for you at this point. And it all starts right here with forgiveness. And forgiveness is so powerful. And I remember the first time I had to forgive my abuser too. But every time I saw him, there would be another trigger. And I'm like, you would remember it, you know? And for me, it wasn't until he died that those triggers went away. But I wasn't around him all the time either.
Right.
And you know, and he died several years ago. But I actually had triggers still come after that, but it was of abandonment. It was more of my mom issues versus the sexual abuse.
Sure.
So, you know, when you have a trigger, you guys, it's like this thing goes off on the inside of you, and it feels like something has unlocked, and it brings out pain, it brings out trauma, it could be anger, it could be, and it sets you off. It's like it just sets you off, and you begin to do things that you normally wouldn't do. You would respond, maybe even say things or react in a certain way or not do things. And those triggers would do that, and it would bring back memories.
Yes.
So in the next episode, we're going to talk about those memories, and we're going to talk about forgiveness and the second marriage and the divorce and then the ministry that was birthed out of that. Yes. You guys, you don't want to miss this, because now Dee is flowing in her gift, in her ministry, and she stands here forgiven and healed, and now she's leading other people, opening doors for other people to be healed of all the trauma of your past. I want you guys to know that God loves you so much. No matter what you've been through, no matter what you've done, there's nothing that can separate you from the love of God. I got to say this to somebody. God loves you so much. There's nothing that you can do to make him love you any more than he does right now. Even while you were in sin, he died for you. While you were yet sinners, he loved you that much. He loved you as much when you were in sin as he loves you even now. See, people, you know, with humans, we grow deeper and deeper in love. But God is not a human. He's supernatural. He's outside of time. So he doesn't need to get to know you to fall in love with you anymore. He already knows you.
Exactly.
And on the day that you were born, he loved you with everything he had at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Mm-hmm. So there's everybody trying to earn their love for God. Well, God will love me if I do this, and, you know, I'll be accepted by God if I do this. No, all he ever wants is your heart. Mm-hmm. That's all he wants is your heart. Mm-hmm. And when you give him your heart, out of that is an overflow in your life of his presence.
Yes.
And you begin to have this relationship with him. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that you should ever receive among salvation or upon salvation is love. You feel the love of God. You feel it come upon you. You feel it embrace you. You feel it draw you. And you can't escape it. And it's like, oh, I need more of that. I need more of that. I need more of that.
Yes.
So their healing is a journey. And we live in a broken world. And there's broken people in this world. But we serve a God who is able to heal. His name is Healer. Jesus is a healer. And he is available. I don't know, maybe you need him today. Maybe you need healing right now. Maybe your heart's been broken into a million pieces. Maybe you're hurting so bad. Maybe you've been remembering things and things from your past. I want you to know that Jesus is available right now to touch you. And through the stories of other people and through Dee's story, I pray, God, that there would be ministry and just ministry angels that are sent forth into your room right now, and that you would begin to feel the embrace and the love of God, and that your life would change and that the journey can begin now. And we want to hear from you. If your journey is beginning now, we want to hear from you. Dee, tell us how people can get in touch with you if they want to reach out to you and say, hey, you know, your testimony really touched me.
Exactly. There are a couple of ways. You can actually find me on both Facebook and Instagram at Dee Boyd, or you can contact me through my website, which would be d@IamFreeandFit.com. Either way, I will definitely respond back to you.
And we'll have that put in the show notes right below. All right. Thank you guys for joining us for episode 53 with Dee Boyd. And join us next week for part 3. You don't want to miss this. We'll see you guys then. Bye.
Thank you for listening to One Voice Makes a Difference. It is our prayer that through this episode, God has given you a new hope and inspiration to come out of darkness, break the silence, and tell somebody so His light and healing power may begin working in you. If you would like to connect with Janet, visit her website at janetswanson.org. Finally, and most importantly, if you are currently in crisis, please call the 24/7 crisis hotline at 1-800-273-8255 or visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Don't hesitate. Your voice and your life matters.